Hello and welcome to today's KDP University at Home with Julia Kent. I'm Trisha, and for the past 5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books teams learning the business so I can share it with authors. Prior to coming to Amazon, I worked as a graphic artist, project manager, and educator. Currently, I'm privileged to work on the KDP University team, helping authors use the KDP website to make the most of their author journey. But enough about me. We're all here to talk to Julia. New York Times and USA Today best-selling author Julia Kent writes romantic comedy with an edge. Since her first release, her novels have sold over 2 million copies, appeared on multiple bestseller lists, and have been translated to several languages. Kent lives in New England with her husband and children and has an unhealthy obsession with wild blackberries, Outlander, and coffee. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Trisha. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're so thrilled that you could join us. All right, let's jump into it. How did you get started with writing?
So I started writing. It's the same story most writers have. When I was 9, I found out that people wrote things. But in terms of professional, as in getting paid, I was 16. And I got my start as a columnist for a weekly newspaper in my hometown. And I made $5 a column. And so it was about $10 a week, which was a lot in the 1980s. I'm showing my age. But I got to write the sports column for my high school and then sort of a general column for my high school. And it was actually great because it meant I had to call all of the football captains, the team captains for everything to get the reports. But that was how I got my start.
Gotcha. Now, when did you start writing novels? Did that happen? Like, did you just continue that path and start writing right away, or did it take a minute?
No, so I wrote my first full-length novel at 23, and it was an exercise. I was in grad school at the time and decided that I was tired of writing policy history papers, which was my focus in my PhD program. And so I wanted to write a novel, and I took time over the summer to write a trunked novel that will never, ever see the light of day. But I did it, and it was so exciting to write a full-length, it was about 60,000 words, novel on my own, start to finish. And so I set that aside, but I didn't stop writing fiction. I wrote short stories, and then I got very deep into creative nonfiction. And so that, I spent about a decade and a half writing that, publishing some essays, and then moved over into writing romance novels, the late 20-aughts, so 08, 09.
Now, did you start publishing traditionally in the beginning?
No, I started out indie. I guess I'm 98.5% indie, is the best way to put it. So I've had one very small novella published by Avon Impulse, and I've done a couple of print and audio deals with more traditional publishing entities, for want of a better term. But I am, like I said, 98, 99% indie. And so I got my start the way lots of people got their start back in 2011, 2012. So I'm not part of the very first wave, but I'm that very close second wave. I learned about people writing for this new thing called Kindle. And at the time I was a business writer, I wrote business content for the web. And so I spent years living a dual career life. I worked as a university professor and administrator, but I also worked as a web content writer, SEO specialist. And funny enough, those two, the SEO specialist and the fiction writing dovetailed in a bizarre situation where some friends who were doing business content writing were talking about the Kindle in some forums I was in, and they said they had taken out old stories that they had just given up on ever publishing with traditional publishing, and had started making a few $100s a month on this thing. And so my ears perked up, but I thought, okay, I'm good doing what I'm already doing. And then people started talking about making $1,000 a month, and then $5,000 a month. And that's when I said, okay, wait a minute. If they can do it, I can do it. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, but more like when I see that somebody else can do something that I'm reasonably certain I can try, I find that very encouraging. And so I said, well, what could I do? And I had been a history and government professor, and I thought, well, I can write historical romance. That's what I'll write. And I won't mention my dead pen name, but it turns out just because you know your history doesn't mean that you're a good historical romance writer.
Gotcha.
So I have a string of failures behind what eventually became a success for me. And so I published my first contemporary romance and romantic comedy in November of 2012, and it went from there.
That's amazing. But things have changed a lot since you started. You're talking about getting into that first wave, and then it's about 10 years later.
Yeah, and a lot of
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. 10 years, when I realized that it's been that long since I dipped my toes in, and almost 9 years writing romantic comedies, so much has changed in the last 10 years. I mean, back when I got my start, my husband had to do all my formatting for me because Vellum didn't exist, or other programs that do the formatting for you. And he's a software developer, and so I had in-house tech support, fortunately. Or he did my first cover. I mean, we downloaded a $25 stock photo, and he did it in GIMP, and it sold. In fact, he did my first 6 covers. And then I finally said, I think I might want to try something new, and went and hired a professional cover designer, which upped the quality. No offense to my husband, they were good covers. They were good covers for 2012. Right. And that's part of what being in this business for so long has shown me, is that you have to change, and you have to change rapidly sometimes. What stays the same is evergreen. It's the quality of what you write and whether you meet your readers' expectations. But boy, have the operational details shifted so much.
Yeah, that management aspect, the business aspect, I think. The authors that I meet are so savvy in marketing and branding and knowing their readership. And I think that for those just getting into it, that could be a bit of a challenge.
It can, and I can't give good advice to someone starting in this industry other than advice on covers, on branding, on genre expectations, on craft. But the very specific details, someone who broke out when I broke out can't tell someone now how to break out. I can't tell you how to develop a platform. I already have a huge mailing list. I already have a huge social media following, huge by my standards at least. Not, I'm not way up there, but I'm happy with where I'm at. But I can't tell you how to get that rocket fuel that you need to make that leap up. I mean, I was working as a university administrator when I first started self-publishing, and I was able to leave because I worked so hard. You have to do the extra work. You have to simultaneously live your regular life and put in, I call it the rocket fuel. You need that to get yourself high enough that then you can live this new life. So I was very lucky that I was able to become a full-time writer within about, it took me about 7 months. Well, that was 2012, 2013. I can't tell you how to do that now. And neither can anyone. Like someone who broke out in 2010, that first early vanguard, when I came along in 2012, a lot of their advice didn't work for me. And it goes further down the line. So I think if somebody really is trying to figure out how to break out, look at the people who did it in the last 2 years, because they're the ones who are going to really know a lot more than someone who did it in 2010, 2014. But I'm grateful that I did it when I did it. And I'm grateful that I have this life. I absolutely would not be living the extraordinary life that I'm living right now if it weren't for tools like platforms like KDP.
How many books do you have published?
About 70
Okay.
across various pen names. I'm Julia Kent, but I have other pen names as well.
Oh, you do?
I do.
I find that authors are either they're like, oh, here are all my pen names, or they're like, here's my pen name and I have these little secret ones over here too.
Oh, mine aren't secrets. I mean, I'm happy to share them if you'd like.
It's up to you.
I write romantic suspense as Melly Rain, and I have a character in one of my Julia Kent romantic comedy series, the Random series, which is a rock star romance, crazy, over the top series. And so one of my characters is writing shifter romance. So it's sort of a meta joke. So Darla from my Random series writes the Camp Shifter series, and it's about a training camp for shifters. And then I'm half of the writing duo, Diana Sear, and we write the Billionaire Shifters Club.
Okay.
So I splintered off to do those things because I felt it's for branding purposes. I didn't want somebody picking up a Julia Kent book and getting this intense woman in peril romantic suspense experience and going, what the heck is that?
Right.
So it's actually 72 books now.
Let's talk about how you keep those straight. Having 3 different pen names and being able to market and brand all of those and all the back end, how do you keep it straight?
I have a great team. And sometimes I don't get them straight. Sometimes I make mistakes. I drop social media for one and then realize, oh, sales are down. I really need to connect with my fans more. And other times I lean on team members to help with the marketing or to help with the social media. Sometimes I go through dry spells writing for one pen name or the other. I found, for instance, for various reasons, the romantic suspense became difficult to write in the last year and a half. And so, but I'm picking that back up right now. I'm in the middle of writing new Melly Rain books. And I have a lot of new Julia Kent books coming up as well. It's more the way that my brain works. I tend to write more than one book at the same time, which I know is anathema to lots of authors, but I don't seem to have a linear brain. Just ask my editor. It drives her nuts. But she loves me because I pay her extra.
There you go. So how do you manage that if you've got multiple books happening at the same time? Do your worlds get confused and you start all of a sudden you put the character from over here over here?
So that's never happened. I did have one typo once because I have a character named Declan in one series and a character named Dylan in another. And very savvy readers caught in thankfully in the advanced reader copy or advanced review copy, caught that I had suddenly inserted one into another, and unfortunately it was in a romantic scene, so that really jarred some readers, and I'm very thankful that they caught that. But generally, no, I'm fully immersed in the world I'm in when I'm writing it, almost too much. Like I often, if you videotape, that shows my age. If you recorded me in the middle of writing, I would be making faces and talking to myself and gestures and the whole bit. And so I tend to get fully immersed. I'm in that world. And so I don't cross over. I am actually writing, though, a crossover series where I have characters from 2 different pen names interacting in the same location. And so that's been really mind-blowing because I have to force myself to do what you just asked, like how do you keep them separate? Well, now I have to combine them, and that's been more just fun. I really want to have fun when I write because that's what the reader will absorb from me as I'm writing it. And so
let me ask you, is that a way to get some cross readership between the 2 pen names?
It absolutely has been. So I didn't tell any of my Julia Kent readers that I was writing as Melly Rain, and didn't do that for about 2 years. And then I debuted it suddenly in my newsletter. I just said, I have a secret, and I had a sale on one of the books, and I was doing a big promotion for one of the books, and sold an enormous number of copies just from sending the news to my Julia Kent readers, and then had a fair number of people who said, I'm sorry, I don't read that. And I was like, you know what? That's totally fine. The great thing about publishing is that there's a book for every reader somewhere, but not every book is for every reader. So that's fine. And I now have readers who, the interesting thing, when I announced it, I said I have a secret pen name. It's Romantic Suspense. And I did a contest. I said, if you can guess who it is, you'll win this thing. And so one out of hundreds actually had guessed it. And we went back to her and said, how did you know? She said the voice was so similar, even though the content was different. And I was like, so then I had to go and spend weeks, processing that, because I think of myself as going fully into these different states almost when I write different subgenres. And so that was kind of mind blowing, but one. So I feel pretty good about the way that I write to genre expectations. But it was really interesting to see how many people were willing to cross over and how many people now love both. And I have fans who read every book I put out, no matter what. And whether it's a shifter book or whether it's a romantic comedy or rom suspense, but mostly they want my romantic comedies. So, and that's, those are I think everyone could use a little more light, fun escapism, and that's really what I offer. Although there's plenty of emotion and deeper stuff in there too, because that's the edge. When I say I write romantic comedy with an edge, that's the edge.
Gotcha. Yeah, we all need a good cry every once in a while.
Yes.
So with the crossover, one of the things that we hear frequently is that sometimes if you start having individuals read your books and they're outside that genre, it can impact the search results on Amazon. Did you find that there was a big impact when you did that?
Yes. And so that is one area where it was very difficult to make the decision to do a different pen name, because I knew that it would algorithmically have an effect. I didn't know what the effect would be. And I have seen definitely the also bots shifted and shift when I have a new release. But my books have never behaved normally in the algorithms anyhow. So my husband's a software developer, he's an AI developer, and then I have an SEO background. So we do a lot of we don't have no idea what's going on under the hood, but we're making lots of guesses. And so my books have never really, they're in their own ecosphere. And so the crossover with also bots has never been all that strong. So as time passed, I started to see, oh, okay, I'm cross-populating my own also bots with other genres. This is getting interesting, but I never saw any negative effect with it.
Okay.
Not offhand. But I'm also wide, so I publish everywhere. And so I see the impact of the crossover on all platforms. But on KDP, it was interesting that I didn't see anything specifically negative, but maybe there was something going on. And I know plenty of authors who publish everything under one name. And it's interesting because I don't think there's one right way. Well, that's another thing. Just in general, there is no one right way to do anything in this industry. And if anything drives me nuts, it's overgeneralization. Find your way. And so I know authors who publish literally 5, 6, 7 different genres under the same name, and it works for them. And I'll never know whether it would have worked if I had done different branding on the covers or really focused on bringing my current base over. But I do know that I found a whole new set of readers when I started publishing in romantic suspense. And some of them have crossed over into the rom-com.
Your point is spot on, and you took the words out of my mouth. It's just everybody's journey is unique. So sometimes what works for one author is definitely not going to work for another. And I'm glad to hear that you didn't see a significant impact when you started cross promoting. I think that that's really powerful, and that diversity, there's a something that kind of threads through that, which is the romance aspect. So I think
Yes,
that you're more
it's all
likely to
romance.
get some of those crossover readers.
Yes. Yeah, it's all romance. It all has the happily ever after
Mhm.
eventually in rom suspense. It takes a while. But the I love writing romance. I mean, I love
Mhm.
writing other things, but romance I keep coming back to it, even when I try to write in other genres. There's something about the deep dive into the emotions. And most of my stories, well, actually, all of my books, all of my series are about community at the core. They're
Mhm.
about finding your people. It's not just about finding your one true soulmate. It's also about finding your people, your friends, found family, biological family, whatever, however you want to call it, but finding the people who love and support you at your worst, at your best, in the middle. But I often get reader email and reader comments that say, I want to be best friends with your heroine, or I want to be part of that group at that diner that you write about so much.
Mhm.
And I love that because that's the goal when I write. And I think that you find that in a lot of romance novels. It's not just about finding your person, it's about finding your people.
Mhm. Agreed. Now, you have translated a lot. Have you translated all your books or just the majority of them?
I would love to have the capital to translate all of my books, but I am in the process. So I have 3 languages going right now: German, French, Italian, and I have been translating quite a few over the last year and a half. But I've been publishing translation since 2015. I
Mhm.
got a slower start. So that's been interesting because those markets are completely different. What German readers expect it's completely different from French readers, from Italian readers, and it requires, I feel like I'm back in 2012 trying to figure out this new thing. And you can hire consultants, you can have people on a team that can help, but it's simultaneously really exciting to try something new and to crack a new market, and very frustrating. But it's been really wonderful to see what's universal at the same time. The love story and romance is what people want, but visually, what works in one culture doesn't work in another. So I just finished doing covers for a romantic suspense series, and they're doing the first cover, and it's fascinating to see the difference between the English cover, which I'm recovering. Oh, that's a spoiler. I'm recovering my Melly Ream books. If anybody's watching, that's a spoiler. But to see the English version, the German version, and the French version, and we had to work on looking at what worked in the market, what was appealing to that market, and then find our own unique spin on it,
Mhm.
but at the same time make sure that it fit. So that's been interesting. The other thing with translation that's difficult is I do not speak French, German, or Italian. I can get on a train and buy a beer in German because my husband's mother is German, and I know this much. Ein bisschen. Um, but ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, and that probably was mangled. But
Well,
I
more than
can't.
I know, so you're good.
But I can't judge the quality of work in other languages. So an audiobook, I can listen, I can make my own decisions, but I have to trust other people. I have to find, and so how do you find someone you trust? And that's been an interesting part of the journey. It, but I'm publishing in those 3 different languages across different series, and I'm being careful. I'm banking a number of books because one of the big things I've learned in translations is that readers have in other countries have a long history of, unfortunately, book one of a series will be translated and if it by TradPub, and if it doesn't sell well, then they just don't do the rest, and the readers are frustrated. So there's a trust issue here. And so I'm waiting until I have entire series or like the first 4 books of series done so that I can put them up, put up the pre-order, and earn the trust of the readers before I even start this process. So if I had a tip, that would be one.
That's a great tip. That's definitely not one I've heard before. So how much of the content itself needs to be changed, or is it just the branding?
Oh, the content has to be changed. And there's definitely, I write a lot of wordplay in my romantic comedies. So there are jokes that just will not translate. And some of them are a little risque, so I won't even describe them, but I'll give an example that is not. In English, we'll say, one phrase that often gets used when something that's not okay or that's not right might say, that's not kosher. And so in French, that's not Catholic. And I can't say the French sentence because I don't know French, but so that it means the same thing, but culturally that change has to happen. And so any word, it's not just idioms that have to be shifted, but if you write wordplay, if you write joking, anything that is specific to the United States, or that is a play on words that just isn't going to translate, then you need a highly skilled literary translator, not just somebody who knows how to translate nonfiction. You need somebody who is almost a writer on some level themselves. They don't have to write, but they have to have the heart of a writer, I think, to really get the translation well. And that's where finding a good translator matters. And I've been very fortunate to find good people, especially recently to work with some agencies who have been really hitting it out of the ballpark.
So how long does this process take once you start, the translation process? How long does it take before you have all of the changes that need to happen in the story itself and then the branding?
It really depends, and that's my cut. I'm going to say it depends a lot. It depends on the language. It depends on the availability. Some translators are very good, for instance, with one genre, but might not be ideal for another. So you wouldn't want to work with them for something that's not aligned or a good fit. So the translators who might be good with rom-com and wordplay, they may already have a list of people, and I may have to get on their list and have to wait. Or if I'm already working with someone on a series, it can take anywhere from 3 months to get a translated manuscript back to 6 months or more. It also depends. If I have a 50,000 word book, that's very different from a 100,000 word book. The branding, I A/B test covers. So I will use Facebook ads to test 2 different covers, and whichever one gets the most attention is the one that I go with. And that's been interesting because for my shopping series that I recently put out in German, I did this, and they came within 0.05% of each other. And I was just like, really? What do I do here? And so at that point, I made a business decision, which was I could either embark on a whole new cover, like really finalize the cover, and which would mean that I would have to change all of the covers in the subsequent books, or go with my original English language cover, which was the one that tested 0.05% lower, and ask my wonderful cover designer to just swap the text out. And that's what I did. And that was a business decision, because at that point I was looking at thousands of dollars for new covers versus a nominal fee to use what I already had. And we'll see. I haven't made any determinations on whether that was a smart move or not. But it is with the language barrier, everything takes longer. So I have to, if I write a newsletter, I have to write the newsletter, and then I have to send the copy to the translator, and then if they have questions, they come back. And so there's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so that takes longer than, oh, I'm going to open my newsletter system, type up a quick email, add some graphics, done. So I've had to develop processes that, and I'm more of an on the fly kind of person, but I'm slowly developing processes so that I remember 3 weeks before the release that I need to start now getting that translated text rather than trying to beg somebody to translate it, or I have had to just not send a newsletter out for release and wait a week, and that's awkward. And yeah. So developing systems has really made a difference.
With social media being such a big way that authors promote themselves right now, how do you handle not speaking the language for being able to market content in these different countries or languages?
Yes, well, so far I haven't had much of a social media presence in other languages, I've made a conscious decision not to do a big marketing push until I have enough books out to make it worth it. So like I always feel this, I'm going to say something a little controversial. I always feel bad for people who break out with their first or second or third book, because I broke out with my 6th book, and it was the backlist that people who found me were able to whip through, and that's how I made the money to then be able to quit my job. And so if you break out with your first or second book, what are people going to go back and buy? And how does that give you the rocket fuel? So I have taken that same approach with the foreign language translations and said, well, do I really want to spend a bunch of money on book 2 or 3 in French? No, I want to wait until I have a sizable number of books so that when they find me, they can go, oh, this is great. And to be fair, I'm making the assumption that romance readers in other countries are binge readers like they are in English language, the English language market. So far it's proving to be true. Once they find you, they read through. But so that's been part of why I haven't had a huge social media presence in other countries. I did right before not right before, but in 2019, I have a wonderful author friend named Olivia Riggle, who helped me to go to a large romance conference called I'm going to butcher the French, I'm sorry, Olivia, Festival Roman de Féminine, which is a French romance readers conference, and it was absolutely wonderful. And thankfully, people translated it for me, because I can say "Je m'appelle Mélanie" and or "Je m'appelle Julia" or "Je m'appelle" whatever, and that's it. Like that's all I can say, and I can say "mon petit chou," and I have no real French. So, but that if the pandemic hadn't happened, I would have loved to have gone to a German conference, or gone to an Italian conference in Italy, or gone to book signings. There are book signings that are done all over the world, and hopefully as things calm down, that will be something, that'll be a way to connect with those readers as well.
Now, audiobooks, that's another thing. Do you release audiobooks for every one of your books simultaneously as the book release? Not overall, but I have. Meaning, that was a big goal of mine for 2019, and I did it. And then everything with the pandemic happened. But before that, I was not I'm one of the indies who writes right up to the last minute, or had been. I'm not now. But so in 2018, I set a goal that in 2019 I was going to do simultaneous audio for everything. And you have to write ahead, and you have to coordinate, and it takes a lot. And you can't predict a glitch on ACX, which happens, or you can't predict a narrator who suddenly has a bigger project and they have to boot you. But
my goal is to do simultaneous audio. I find that my releases are bigger. I connect, more readers feel like they are getting what they need. It's like if you release only an ebook and not print, you're leaving out the print readers. And with audio, as more and more authors do simultaneous audio, I think it's becoming, it's not so much expected, but people really, really enjoy it, the readers who focus on audio. But I am actually slowly working through my backlist and trying to get my backlist into audio. I'm at the point where I now have 50 audiobooks.
Okay.
And so most of them are done, but some of my books are long and have I have one book that literally has 8 points of view, and I started to realize that may be an audio nightmare. And so I'm making this is where the business decision comes in. It literally becomes, as a capital investment, is this a good use of my money right now? And so certain backlist books, absolutely. And other backlist books, not yet. So that's where I am. But I am, as of now, I'm scheduled for all my future releases to have simultaneous audio.
How much time do you have to leave in order to do that?
It depends entirely on the narrators and on what is going on ACX. In other words, if there's reports of long delays, then you need longer. If everything's smooth and seamless, but if you can't predict that, then you need more time. For me, I generally need about 3 to 4 months lead time. I've cut it as tight as 2 months, and I never want to do that again, ever, because if there's an error in the audio file that qualitatively changes the listener's experience, like there are little things that I don't ask the narrators to fix. If they leave out an adjective, that's not a big deal. But if it qualitatively changes it and has to be done, you can't expect a narrator to drop everything and change it within an hour. They often need days. Maybe they're on, they have other jobs. The narrators that I've worked with are all consummate professionals. They are outstanding. I think they're kind of underappreciated in the industry because they do such quality work, and they take our books and they deepen them and they make them that much richer. And so I want to respect their professional lives. So I'm trying to do 3 to 4 months in advance. And that's hard. That's really hard. There are a lot of indies who are literally staring at their KDP dashboard with 23 minutes to go, and I've been one of those, going, please take, please, please upload, please. And you can't do simultaneous audio if that's where you're at.
Right. But I mean, releasing audio, the more formats that you're able to release, the wider your audience of readers will be.
Absolutely. And it's been really interesting to see how many people are audio readers and how much it's growing. So my audio sales were just huge for me. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say something like in 2018, they were 7% or 8% of my sales. And in 2019, they were something like 15%. And it was just like, wow. So getting into audio for me has been incredibly beneficial. Again, other authors, I know people who do better with translations than they do with audio, and that's where they focus their capital. So that business side has to come in. Where does my capital go to generate what I need? And for me, it's audio.
So with audio, do you have multiple narrators that you work with, or do you have one that you're like, this is the narrator that works for me?
Oh no, I work with multiple narrators, and and now I've been working with production companies that you can hire and work with. And so like Lyric Audio Books is one of them. And so when I pick a narrator to narrate a character, my goal is that person is that character for the whole series, because I know how important that is to listeners. And so I have worked with if I start naming them all, I'm afraid I'll leave one out, and so I don't want to be that person. But I'm just so amazed and pleased with the people I've worked with. But I also picked carefully. I went the first couple of narrators I worked with, I did through word of mouth or through auditions plus word of mouth. And then now it's just, I listen to an audiobook that I like of theirs, and I literally email them and say, hi, I love your work. This is who I am. This is what I write. Would you be interested in working with me? Or now it's changed, because if you work with a production company, you can literally say to a production company, these are the narrators I'm interested in working with. And then it becomes, what's their schedule like? Is your book or series one that interests them, or that they feel that they could do right? And it goes from there. So you don't always get, and this is true if you work directly with narrators, you don't always get the narrator that you want. It's just a reality. But I have found, and I've even waited, like I've delayed putting out a book for a narrator, because I felt that particular person's characterization of my character is so perfect, it's worth the wait.
So do you find that either female narrators or male narrators work better for your content?
It depends on what I've written. So if it's first person, if I have a dual POV book and it's first person, then I want a male narrator for the first person, male POV, and a female narrator for. So if it's third person, I generally still try to get a female to do the female point of view, male to do the male point of view. But I am going to name a name. I have a book that was narrated by Sebastian York, and he did both the male and the female, and that was third person. And so that was one exception that I've made.
And you don't see any difference in the performance of the one that was completely narrated by Sebastian versus the others?
I mean, there's difference in that he's a guy doing the female parts, but he's just amazing to work with. And in that case, for various reasons, it made sense to do it that way. And readers love that book just as much as they love the other one. So I haven't seen any negative or downside to that. But in general, and that's the exception out of 50 books. So I want a female narrator for female POV and male for male.
Okay. So we have a couple questions that I've been kind of working through the questions as we've been talking. I didn't want you to think I was skipping them, but I think we're going to kind of hop around a little bit to get a few more of these in.
Okay.
Do you feel that with your team, you mentioned that you have a team. Does that make you feel like you're an entire publishing company within your own right, or how do you view that?
I technically am a publishing company. I have an S Corp registered, and my publishing brand is Prosaic Press, which started out as a total joke. And then it just became, when I had to pick a name, I was like, all right, let's just have a play on words. So I do feel like I am a publishing company, and I publish when I co-author with people. I publish the books, and I have, when I make deals, it's through Prosaic Press. And so I do have a team. I have I'm now at, if you include my husband, and I do, although he has his own business, his AI development. But if you include him, there's 5 people now that are part of, like, are steadily part of the business. And then that doesn't include all the freelancers, and when you think about cover designers, and then the financial people, bookkeeper, CPA, all of the various people that are part of running a business. I mean, we are the creatives, we create the product, and we are the CEOs. What other business do you see that in? There are, I mean, I can think of them, but not many. And I always say I'm an accidental CEO, and I don't have a business background. I I got a degree in political science and policy history, but I've had to get a crash course in it. And fortunately, I have some good instincts, but I have a long string of failures and mistakes behind me too, which is why I've been adding a team together, because I need people. I also have a very busy personal life. I have 3 kids. I have kids with special needs, and which is not uncommon among romance authors that I've met as well, because the flexibility of being able to write and have that that much needed give and take with your time and with your day when you do have children with special needs is invaluable. But I do run a business. It is a publishing business. And I think that professionalization is the trend. More and more indies are treating, and lots of us have treated our business like a business from the start, but more and more indies are treating this like a business. And I think that that's really important.
Mm-hmm. With that, who are your 5 core people that you, not names, but what are their roles? The 5 core roles that you have in your business.
Okay, so if I count my husband, he is kind of all over the place. He does whatever is needed, but he is not my full-time assistant. We tried that, did not work. Like those of you who have the full-time spouse assistant who, like, you guys are partners and everything, he is emotionally there, operationally no. And so we sort of decided, thankfully, that that was not going to work for us. And so, but he is my alpha reader. He reads everything I write. He is my biggest cheerleader. I could not be where I am without him. But he's also my techie. And so he helps me to fix all kinds of technical stuff. But, and then I have a longtime assistant who's been with, oh my gosh, it's been 7 years almost, been with me. And she does like a little bit of everything, but her big focus is on right now, because it's all shifted over the last year as I've added more team members, but she does a lot of the promo and the fan engagement, the ARC distribution, the scheduling of promotions and marketing. More recently, she's been reading, so my husband reads first and then she reads. I'm going to leave out stuff, and if she's watching, she's going to be like, I do more than that. And she does. She also saves me from myself and catches errors, catches mistakes. She's the person who texts me at 6:30 in the morning when I have a BookBub featured deal and says, the price didn't change, and I'm able to magically fix it in time. So those are 2. I have someone now who is doing more business affairs, helping me with various vendors and helping me with tracking me operationally and what I need to do, what I'm not doing. She helps with covers. It's like a wide range of things, but that's so it's 3. And then I have somebody who's helping with newsletter, and I have and website issues. It's sort of a mix. And it sounds very distributed, and yet it's not. Each person does the thing that they are world-class at for me. And we're still, for a couple people, we're still figuring out what exactly that is, but the things they're doing, they do just at a top level. And that was my goal when I decided to expand my team, because for the longest time, it was me, my longtime assistant, and then my husband. And I said, okay, if I'm going to grow, I have to do the normal business growth curve where you dip before you climb. And it's time to bring people on, but then I was like, well, what would I have them do? And I tend to be a bit of an achiever, like overachiever. I can do everything. I can do that. I can do that. And then reality hit. And so I've been really working hard at figuring out, what do you like to do and what are you good at? And then that's what you're going to have on your plate. Mm-hmm. So it's all a work in progress right now. Like if some of them see this, they're going to be like, sure. But like I said, it's a work in progress. And it's the same for me. I'm trying to figure out what I am superstitiously hanging on to.
Mhm.
that I could hand off to someone else. Because I think when you're in this industry long enough, you do I still do stuff that I know deep down I don't need to do, or I could hand off to someone else. But I've been doing it for 10 years, and so it feels like I should keep doing that thing.
It's a comfort to be able
Yes,
to do that. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Um, so the people the team that works for you, are they full time or are they part time?
No, they're all contractors.
Okay.
And my husband just, yeah, because too bad. He's with me for the ride.
By the way, I believe your assistant just said that she is watching and she adores you.
Oh, hello.
We'll just throw that out there. All right, so let's see a couple other questions. Oh my gosh, we only have time for a few more questions. Um, what do you see as when you started publishing in the different cultures and the different languages? Uh, what were the big differences between each of the cultures or translations? Because I think some people in the US may naively think, oh, it's Europe, it's not going to be that big, but it is.
So there, the one big difference that stands out is that people at least this is my experience. Again, I can't speak for every indie. People readers who read French and German and Italian do not sign up for newsletters. They just, you can, I mean, it's a trickle. It's
Mhm.
tiny. And so getting to those readers is more of a challenge. My newsletter is my biggest tool for reaching people. And so it's been like, you can use Facebook ads, you can use AMS ads, certainly you can use other ad platforms, but it's still very retailer driven. It's what the retailers surface that drives sales more. And so getting into those spaces is a challenge. And I'm so used to, and I think this is true for a lot of indies, we're so used to being able to directly reach readers. I think it's one of the things that we as a subset of the industry are world class at. And so it became like, wait, what do you mean? I only have, I sold all these books, but I only have this many people on my newsletter. And then I'll send a newsletter and get a bunch of unsubscribes. It's like, and I think it's a cultural difference.
Okay.
So that's been interesting to go, okay, I have to go back and think, how do I get surfacing or how do I get exposure on the retailers? Well, and then this is chicken egg, because now I'm nobody. I'm nobody in French, in German, and Italian. Why would they put my book? They don't care that I sold 2 million or however many million, they don't care that I sold that many in English because I'm new. And so in that sense, it's been a slog. It's been an interesting slog, but it's been a slog because I've had to go, all right, ads it is. Well, the ads don't always work because there are cultural differences, or I tend to be chatty in ads, or I come up with a tagline. Well, what if your tagline doesn't translate? Or what if it does, and the humor for me, for me writing humor, what if the humor doesn't translate? What if they don't? If one of my taglines for my shopping series is, have you ever met a billionaire when your hand's down the toilet in the men's room of one of his stores? Because she drops her phone and it's a long story. She's a mystery shopper. She's in the men's room evaluating the quality of the cleaning and drops her phone in the toilet when she's hiding. So that's one of the funny little, it catches people's attention in English. Well, it just doesn't translate well because it sounds like she just has her hand in the toilet. Like it doesn't work. So
Right.
something else has to happen. So it's very much like being a newbie in that sense, because they're not signing up for my newsletter and I'm newsletter focused. So
Right.
that's an example. Like that's a specific example.
So we've got just time for one more question, and it's kind of one of a stump your guest question,
Okay.
but Is there, I know there's been lots of learnings and lots of mistakes and everything like that. If you could go back and redo one thing in your journey, what would it be?
Oh, I can tell you exactly what I would do. My shopping series is a mix of couples throughout the series. So I start out with Shannon and Declan, billionaire and mystery shopper. And then the first 6 books are them. And then the 7th book, I decided I would write about her best friend and his brother. And then book 8 is Shannon and Declan again. And then book 9 is Andrew and Amanda. And I did this. And it made sense at the time. And now I'm 17 books into this series, and readers would really prefer this couple. But what, unfortunately, I've interwoven their stories so much, like in book 7, you get the new couple, but the wedding preparations for the first couple are interwoven from their perspective. So as a matter of craft and marketing, I wish I could go back in time and say to myself, start a new series, like do it differently, like don't, and I interwove them because my other series, I've interwoven characters, but, and to get crossover, to get people to try this series. But in retrospect, doing that has made it much harder to market the series because people read books 1 through 6 and then they open book 7 and go, what happened? And so that's what I would change.
Excellent call out. I think that's really good advice. As a reader, I can totally relate to that.
It's still great. I mean, I love the series and still have fun, but it does make it awkward.
Right. All right, we are at time. This has gone by so quickly. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all this great information about audiobooks and translations and expanding your audience.
Well, thank you. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate it.
All right, on that note, thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.
And happy publishing, everyone.